Hello, Stockspoker. I got a request that I like. It was from the forums, and I was asked to do a video for a Sunday Million qualifier. So I thought that's a cool idea. And bam! Here's the video. So the basic idea behind this is going to be that for a qualifier you have different strategy than in a normal sit and go. This particular qualifier is a 20-man 2700 FPP qualifier where the top 4 players advance to the Sunday Million. So 2700 FPP is I don't know, maybe about about $35 worth. And the idea is that we want to turn this into a ticket, and the best way to do that is going to depend a lot on how many guys get paid relative to the size of the field. So the most extreme case is a winner-take-all, and in a winner-take-all, it doesn't matter that when another guy gets eliminated, because the person with all the chips is going to take the only ticket, and you just want to take any edge you can to win chips. Okay, so for instance, if a push is at all profitable from a chip perspective, you'd want to make it. If you can make a call where you're getting slightly better than 2-to-1 odds with a pretty weak hand, you'd want to make it even if there are only a couple guys left, because it doesn't matter anytime that you advance in terms of 3 guys left, 2 guys left. It only matters in that case if you win. And a very different extreme would be, so another type of qualifier they have to get to the Sunday Million is a 5700 FPP 10-man where the top 4 guys advance. So with almost half of the people advancing, a very flat structure, chips are very valuable, even if you don't have very many, and you want to play a very tight game, really sticking to value, and you want to minimize swings. So anytime 2 guys gamble in that game, you gain tremendously. And a normal sit and go is somewhere in between. So maybe you have 3 or 4 guys. Well, normally 3 guys getting paid out of 9 or 10 starting, and the payouts vary from first, second to third. But that would be something in between 4 out of 10 getting paid, and just the winner getting paid. So in this one, where 4 out of 20 get paid, that's 20%. So it's a little more first-oriented than a normal sit and go of 30% or 33%, but less so than a winner-take-all. So we're going to be playing kind of like a multi-table strategy where we wouldn't take any chip edge. Okay, when other guys gamble, we still gain something when they get eliminated, but we can't just coast our way into the money and let loose guys eliminate each other like you might be able to in a situation where 40% of the guys are getting paid. So we'll look at how these kind of decisions alter, these considerations alter how we might play a normal sit and go style as this progresses. And it's going to be pretty important to look at other players' stats and see their approach, both so we know who to tangle with, and during late stages, whether or not we need to actively gamble, or whether these guys are very likely to knock each other out. And during low blinds, we're just going to follow a pretty conventional tight aggressive strategy, which is how you would play a sit and go, and pretty commonly for a multi-table. So some good multi-table pros play a loose aggressive strategy early, but you can absolutely play tight aggressive, pretty similar to a sit and go, and only stick with top quality hands. And that is the approach that we're going to take for this qualifier. So with that said, one thing that you really have to be careful of anytime that you're playing a satellite, whether it's for the Sunday Million, whether it's like $1.60 satellite into an $11 game, whether it's for the WSOP, is not only the level of the competition, which is often softer than you find for a comparable cash buy-in, but also, is the prize worth as much to you as the cash is? Okay, so here you're putting up, the cash value as if it's a 215 first place, but the question is this actually worth 215 bucks to you? And if Sunday Million entry. So if it isn't, maybe an entry to the Sunday Million is only worth 180 bucks to you or something like that, then you should obviously be a lot more selective as to which ones of these you play, and you need a huge equity edge. Okay, in this hand we're getting 5 to 1. We'll complete with the mid-suited king. And the flop comes and we get top pair, but it's not a super strong top pair. So a lot of times in a situation like this, I like to do process of elimination. So you go back to your SAT days, but think about it, right? There are only a fixed number of things you can do right now, okay? You can check fold, check raise, check call, or bet out. Check folding is pretty weak with top pair in a three-way pot, so that's not so bad an option. You could do that and it wouldn't be too bad. But with top pair, I think that's a little too strong. So if I'm going to at least call a bet, I think check calling is a little passive, so I'd rather lead out. And a mid-king really isn't strong enough to check raise and build a big pot out of position, so I'm just going to bet out. And our decision making is kind of simplified, okay? If we're raised, we're not going to stick around, and if we're called, we'll just want to see a cheap showdown unless we can improve to two pair of trips. So even facing this min raise, we'll let it go, and we take a bet fold line. So it's always kind of annoying to fold to a nuisance raise, but most likely we're only drawing to possibly only 2 outs, okay, if he has a better king. And that was, I believe, the first hand he had played. So we'll give him some credit. It's not like he's particularly loose. And the problem is, okay, so let's say we check there instead, and he bet 60, then what? You would rather not be the caller. You don't want to let some guy with king jack or king queen bet 3 streets for value when you just passively call him down and end up losing a very big pot. But king 7, it's not super strong to be check raising early in the going. So I like the bet fold line there, and if you really don't know what to do in a situation like that, just check folding really isn't so bad. So unless it's, in a winner-take-all, it probably isn't so good. But in a situation where you benefit at all when other guys gamble, making the play that's maybe a little too tight is rarely a big mistake. So I'm going to skip some of these hands during low blinds when guys aren't doing so much, and I'll never hand. Queen Jack I would muck regardless. And same with for Jack from any position. Okay. So now we have the button, and if he checks, we'll play for value, so this hand we just check behind. We're not going to raise with nothing. And the structure here is also a little different from the normal PokerStars sit and go, in that the blinds jump from 100, 200 without an ante to 153 with an ante. Suited 10 Jack or call, and we're going to try our luck with a lead out again, because we have, if we're behind right now, as we probably are, we have 12 outs to improve to a very strong hand. Okay, then 9 flush outs plus the 3 extra straight outs. So with 12 outs, we're going to be improving a bit under half the time, maybe 45% of the time, and that's too strong to check fold. So again, since we call a bet, we're just going to make it ourselves, and we're fine to win immediately or get a call. So we'll be improving about a quarter of the time. Okay, so now we do get called and we miss, which isn't a great outcome. So hope to see a free river, which is just what happens. And this isn't a major. I mean, this is great, and but we're full 25% almost to improve with each card. So this isn't a huge suck out, and our strategy now is just going to be to bet for value. So this guy could have a number of different hands. If he's got nothing like a misdraw, he'll probably fold. But we're going to target a guy who has a queen and maybe got a little passive at the turn. And in that case, a bet of a bit over half the pot is probably the most he's going to call with this pretty scary river. And based on this fold, I think there's a good chance that he might have. He seems kind of loose. He could have had a lot of stuff, maybe an underpair or a hand like King Jack, possibly another combo draw like ours. And now he limps again the next hand, confirming our idea that he might be loose. And with Ace King, we'll make a standard value raise, bumping it up to 4 times. And he folds. So, we're gonna assume that he's pretty loose. And if he limps again, maybe during higher blinds, we won't give him much credit for trapping, and we'll just kind of take him literally as being weak. Let's see if we can figure out anything in this hand. So Jack Straw calls the raise out of position and bets into this very scary board. So not not too much we can figure out there, except that nobody had a very strong hand. Ace 9 is an easy fold. And again, we're pretty much sticking to our strategy of playing for value. Now this Ace Jack, I would fold from any of the earlier positions. You could definitely fold it here, and I'm going to come in though with a raise. Any later I'd definitely raise. Any earlier I'd most likely fold. And we're happy just to win the blinds. That's a fine result. So before I played this game, I did one of the 5700 FPP qualifiers, and I'm happy to show you guys a game that I've lost, and I have done that in my past videos. I've let my ego suffer, but it was pretty lame. I was sucked out on majorly with 5 guys left, not to qualify, and it only lasted about 30 hands, so I didn't think it would be super interesting. But situations like that, you can play a purely value game, and that's really what my strategy was there. Just waiting for good hands, and guys were knocking each other out pretty quick. And here, so I'll just lay this down. Again, with 4 guys out of 20, you can't just fold every hand, even if your opponents are very loose. But there's no reason to open up too much. And that's in pretty distinct contrast to the double shootout type format that's more common for, say, WSOP satellites, where 1 out of 81 gets paid, and you simply play a cash or MDT type style. And I do have at least one video up, winner take all, and I know Stocks Poker's own Mad Matros has at least 1 or 2 of those as well. So hopefully before the WSOP, we'll have all sorts of satellite examples up, because I know that a number of you guys are going to want to take a shot at some of those. And that's not such a bad thing to do. You can also buy into those with W dollars. And if you don't know about that, I'll be happy to field questions, and we'll probably, in fact, explicitly discuss good ways subtle ways, easy ways, to increase your equity for any type of satellite in that WSOP context. Now, meanwhile, we have pretty standard, high blind play developing, so we're going to be going into shove fold mode pretty soon. And playing a more standard sit-and-go game. So yeah, anytime you're under 10 blinds, you're mainly thinking shove fold. And with queens, we're thinking shove. So our opponent raises, and this is a pretty obvious re-raise. He's probably not going to fold here, but this is obviously strong enough to do for value. And most of the time, all the time we're going to have a 70-30 favorite versus ace-jack or something like that. And ideally, he has an underpair, in which case we're a huge favorite. And this time that's exactly what he has. So we didn't play a lot of hands early, but we managed to get some nice value from the ones we did. And we'll try to continue with that strategy and see how it works out. Suited ace-5, I'd raise from the button. So here I'd raise maybe to 350 or something, kind of a small raise. But I'm not going to do that from the hijack. And ace-jack, I will raise. Okay, so this is like under the gun in a six-handed game, where ace-jack is definitely good enough to open. And I'll make my pretty standard raise to 2.5 blinds. With any ace-jack, ace-10 suited, ace-queen hand, always, almost always pretty happy just to win without a fight. And you might say, well, then why not just raise with any cards if you're looking to win without a fight? And sometimes I do raise with any two cards. But, you know, when the big blind calls you, or somebody else calls you, you have a lot more showdown value with two decent starting cards. And this hand benefits us, because we have fewer players remaining who can possibly finish in the money. And it's looking like a table consolidation will occur soon. And we continue to stick with our value strategy. And in situations like these, when you get short stacked, you have a very powerful weapon in just shoving. Because guys aren't going to want to call off our other chips without a pretty strong hand. Similar to a normal sitting gum. So ace-10 suited is good enough to raise. And this is a little troublesome, okay? The reason it is, obviously this guy's all in. So his bet's the equivalent of something to 2,300, because he may as well bet his remaining 500. So you always want to think about pot odds here. If he bet 2,300, the pot's that, plus 200, 2,500, plus the 500 we bet, so about 3,000. And it costs us, if he had bet 2,300, another 1,800 to call. So we're getting pot odds of well under 2 to 1, and I'm too afraid that he's going to have us dominated here with a hand like ace-jack, ace-queen, pocket tens, and I'm just going to let that go. So it's a little unfortunate, but we still have good chip position. And he could have been making a play on us. He's pretty aggressive, but I'm not going to risk that with things going good otherwise. And the main thing there is this, before you make kind of a quick play and say, well, I've got a strong hand and I'm raising from my position, so I'm just going to call this re-steal, or there's no way I'm going to call an all-in here. Just think about your pot odds, because sometimes it's a little deceptive. And you think, well, you see us there. I think my instinct was to fold, and that's kind of what the pot odds said as well. But sometimes you'd be surprised and realize that you're actually getting better than 2 to 1 odds or something, in which case it's usually worth calling. So pot odds are good. Calculate the pot odds. And if you're playing online, just have a calculator, okay? If you don't have software that's doing it, there's no shame in using a calculator. That's the reason it's online poker, because okay, you're sitting there in your pajamas with your calculator, and it's all good. So no shame in the calculator. The blinds now jump to 153. And our starting pot with the antes is going to be 600 chips. So it's kind of like The starting pot is the same as if the blinds were 200, 400 without the ante, and with our stack of 2100, we're therefore going to be shoving pretty widely. And ace-10 suited more than qualifies. And we pick up a very nice addition to our stack when everybody folds. I love antes. The only problem with the replayer is that's a separate action every time people ante. Alright, so we have an effective all-in followed by 2 calls. And at this stage in the game, we're thinking these guys, even though they're kind of short-stacked, have decent hands. Particularly the overcaller and the small blind. So let's see here. Okay, well I'm completely wrong. But normally a tight guy in the small blind isn't going to call off his entire stack quite that lightly. And meanwhile, we've consolidated tables, and the blinds are still 153, but now we have 10 guys anteing, 25 each, so the starting pot is pretty huge. The starting pot is 700, so it's even closer to blinds of 250 and 500, and the moral there is anytime you can steal the blinds without a fight, you gain hugely. So look at this hand here, okay? Mile High Ace risks 1,015 chips, his remaining stack, to win a pot of 700. So if he gets a fold 80% of the time and wins immediately, then he shows a very nice profit. And most likely, Joe Kill 6 Stone is going to fold often enough to subsidize the times, give Mile High a free roll those times that he actually has to gamble. So stealing is going to be the way that we accumulate chips the best here. And this, for instance, is going to be an any 2 card shove. If it's folded to us, I'll gleefully put in my chips. Okay, not after a raise, of course. Okay. 8-9 suited, I will push if it's folded to me. Which it's not, but with blinds of effective blinds, ante-less blinds for around 2-4, 255, that's going to show a profit. So I talk about these ante-less blinds. Dan Harrington, of course, would use the M. And the M is cool. The M is, of course, the ratio of your stack to the starting pot. So here we're starting pots of close to 700 and a stack of just over 2100. I have an M just above 3, which is in the pushing zone. But I find it easier to just think about the big blind measure, how many big blinds do you have, and just when there's an ante, thinking about in terms of ante-less blinds. I mean, what does Dan Harrington know about poker, right? It's not like he's won anything or made any money off the game. Man, I should probably say that was a joke, because I can just picture somebody in the forum being like, and he's got no respect for Dan Harrington, and what have you made, and Dan Harrington has just clappered you. Just kidding, right? Dan Harrington's the man, and we all have some good ideas. Everybody can have new insights, no matter what has been already published or put out there in the poker world. And now we have a blind increase, 200, 400, with a 40 ante. And we're getting very short stacked. We're going to be looking to shove very wide. When the blinds pass us, we're going to have under 1,400 chips. And that's enough to steal with around 3.5 blinds worth of chips. But we'll shove pretty wide if we have an opportunity beforehand. Not with chunk, but pretty wide. And if not, we'll just be looking to steal. So 3-jack is too weak. And now we've inherited the big blind, so we'll take our chances. And, okay. God, I should have made this a quiz video, because then I could have quizzed you guys and be like, yo, what do you do now? But, so the thing is here, you really don't have a choice. I mean, this guy's raising another 780. we have the small blind, the big blind, the antes in here. So even though we figured to be behind his hand, we're getting odds of around 5 to 2, and that's too strong to fold with a 10 jack, when a lot of the time we're going to be up against an overcard and underdog, an overcard and an undercard, and only be about a 3 to 2 dog. So this is a definite call. And I'll pretty much insta-call that, and look what he has! How nice is that? So he very kindly shows us a Jack 7, and amazingly it's not split, so we're back in business. And it's nice when these any two cards calls actually work out. You sometimes look like an idiot when they don't. You're like, I'm coaching somebody, okay, so you're getting odds of better than 2 to 1, and then the guy's got aces, and you always look like an idiot, but it's cool when it works out. And here we have effective stacks of around 7 or 8 blinds, and the antes are pretty substantial, so I'm going to be shoving almost any two cards, and a suited 10 will certainly qualify to show a chip profit there. And we'll notice now that we're near the bubble, because pardon me, only 4 guys get paid, and 6 guys remain. Obvious shove here with ace-10 suited. And with the antes, I would shove most aces. I'd let go of the weaker offsuit aces, but mid offsuit aces and pretty much any suited ace I would have shoved there. And suited ace 10 is going to show a very large chip profit. And we'll definitely shove pretty widely when it's full toss in their position, but we certainly don't need to force the play at this point. Okay, in fact, it's looking as if the 4 winners are going to be us, the tight Nick, the tight Sixesly, and the tight, well, relatively, I guess kind of average Andy Hart. So we're certainly not going to be, forcing some kind of a big play here. And now Andy Hart draws out to win a big pot, and we're on the bubble. And we're not going to be looking to gamble. Okay, we're not going to be looking to call bets. We're going to be looking to make them. Okay. So just after I said that, now we've got a situation where it's looking like we may be gambling. So we've got this really tight guy who all of a sudden, well, tight after 13 hands. That may not mean too much, but all of a sudden he shoves on us. Now, the thing is that we're usually going to be a 70-30 dog, on average, in this spot, against a hand like ace-8, ace-10. Okay, most guys will play aces and kings, maybe queens slower here, and a lot of the time it'll be an underpair, and the times when it's a hand like ace-queen, ace-king, it's going to be, I think, roughly balanced by the underpairs, and my feeling is that on average, we're going to be about a 70-30 underdog. In fact, I'm going to pull a Poker Stove and let's take a look and see if Poker Stove agrees with that idea. So, in this particular hand, we've got pocket jacks, obviously, and we're up against. We've got to give our guy a range. So let me see if I can make it so the entire program is on the screen. Here we go. And the only thing we've got to do here is decide an range. Now the reason that I'm not pulling up Wizard, you can absolutely pull up Wizard, is that this isn't a normal sit and go with conventional sit and go payouts. So I'm more interested for the second on figuring out how we're doing against his range and whether or not this is worth a gamble. So let's take a look here. And I don't know why a little trouble. I'll just manually type this in. So we're going to do our hand versus a range of hands in player 1. And for any of you guys that don't have this program, it's very nice freeware, which you can download at pokerstove.com. And the question is, what hand range is he shoving here? And, well, I would say that most pocket pairs, 2 high cards, maybe top 18% looks about right here. So he's shoving ace-9, mid-suited aces, mid-high pocket pairs, good face cards. And in this case, we're about a 2 to 1 favorite against him. So I would actually fold this if we were a good deal deeper. and it was more certain that we were going to money. But right now, I'm second last in chips behind Donuts. So since we could bubble out anyway, and this is a nice little situation, I'm going to go ahead and call. But this wasn't an easy call, and I did use my time bank live. I was very happy to see that we had him dominated as exactly, almost exactly 70-30 dog. And that's a tough situation. So that, let's say for instance that I had my current stack, okay, and the stacks were as were, and Nick and Andy Hart switched places, okay, and Andy Hart was in the small blind and he shoved on me. I wouldn't need aces or kings to call that. I wouldn't even call with queens because Nick is right about to get eliminated. So this was a much less extreme version when we call with the jacks, and because there's only one guy shorter in chips, but you want to be very careful of those situations and not just call because you have a hand that figures to be ahead of the shover's range of hands that he would make that play with. So at this point, the tournament is effectively over. Nick is going to need a real comeback, but we'll see what happens. So the question is, what's our strategy? Well, we don't need to be fancy. So if this were an MTT, we could do some fancy stuff and raise Andy Hart's blind, figuring he wouldn't want to gamble with the other big chip leader, and re-raise very widely. So here we're going to be sticking to straightforward stuff, and we all want Nick to be eliminated. That benefits everybody. If he folds here, I'll shove an E2, because Donuts is probably only going to call with the premium hand. But I'm not going to be doing much that's very fancy. I'll fold my junk hand there. Nick shoves Ace-10 suited, gets called by Jack-9, and holds up. And we're just going to go ahead and stick with value hands. We could probably just sit out and coast into the money, but we're absolutely not going to be doing fancy stuff. Multiple level thinking, for betting Andy Hart, thinking, well, he's got to fold, because no, we're just sticking with value. So, I'm not going to raise this. If I had a hand, let's say I had a hand like pocket 8s here, what would I do? Well, I'd raise, and I'd call a re-raise from Donuts. But, if Andy Hart gave me any action, or maybe 6 Essley or whatever calls, and then bets out the flop and I miss, I just fold. So, just sticking to value. Donut shoves, and I'm guessing we don't know that, but that he had a pretty strong hand because he's willing to risk all his chips when Nick is the shorter hand. So we don't get to see, but he most likely had some kind of a hand there. And let's see what I fold under the gun. Queen 10. So you could play this in a multi-table type situation, maybe with deeper stacks, but not here. And we certainly want successfully to win. And bang! That ends it. So notice that at this point, it doesn't matter that we have a really nice chip stack and that we're a solid second in chips, because our chips have the same value as Donuts' as Andy Hart's, and no matter what your stack is at the end, that's the only thing that matters. So I guess the biggest thing here is that always think specifically about the structure and how that impacts your strategy anytime that you're playing a satellite. And sometimes, that can be very counterintuitive, particularly when there may be 5 or 6 guys left and only 4 money, and you sometimes will be making folds like that Jack's hand when you know that you're ahead of the guy's range, but it's still not profitable to call. So I hope this has given you guys something to think about in terms of the Sunday Million qualifiers and satellite strategy. So I promised I wouldn't say signing off anymore, but I hope you guys do good. Alright.